December 8th, 2021. December 8th, 2021. Okay, why wait around any longer? Let's get to it. So, today we are going to discuss and react and listen to and feel sorry for, perhaps, maybe ridicule, I don't know, whatever. Nephilim free. This guy, okay, I want to show you something about Nephilim free that'll certainly have you questioning the man's sanity. I think he's got insanity. So, I want to first show you this video. Yes, there we go. So I'm first going to show you this video. Oh, no. What I first wanted to do was discuss this this quote. By elementary school age, children start to invoke an ultimate godlike designer to explain the complexity of the world around them. Even children brought up as atheists. What strikes me about this statement is that it means absolutely nothing. What the professor of psychology Alison Gopnik is saying is that children imagine things to explain things. Yes, okay. So this is what Nephilim free used as a graphic somewhere in one of his videos. It might be in the one that we're going to react to eventually. But here's a short one I put together showing Nephilim today and what he's accomplished, or how he is accomplishing what he does on YouTube, because the context is what follows. Okay? I just want you, so pay attention. It's only about 3 minutes long, but I urge you to pay attention. So here we go. Let me just bring it in slowly like that, and then let's...
That's the modern synthesis,
yeah, let's go.
right? No, I didn't say natural selection. I said modern synthesis. Well, I just pointed out that the modern synthesis failed, and evolutionists, biologists all agree on that. So what we're hearing is a lot of philosophical ideas, and you'll see that their examples are based on ideas, and they want you to see this, and it's like a card trick. See? This I'm talking about something not biological, therefore it happens biological. See? Biological. Instead of biological examples, they're telling you their stories and their philosophy, because evolution is not science, it's philosophy. When it comes to things like citrate utilization, the evolutionists, this is the only argument they really have for evolution. If evolution were true, evolution had to produce cooperative mutations, had to build the information that builds physiological novelties in the body plans of living things, else the land-dwelling creature never rises from the fish. The bird never rises from the land-dwelling creature, and etc. Okay, evolutionists never offer arguments about that because they can't. And all you guys are repeating is neo-Darwinianism. That failed.
Neff, you've been
That
going
failed.
on for a hot minute.
Evolutionists
Nephilim
biologists
free
agree
today.
that neo-Darwinianism has failed, and that's why they offer what they call the third way, which includes ideas like phenotypic plasticity and synergetic
What the fuck's he
epistasis
talking
and
about?
whatnot. When it comes to citrate, for example, you offer this kind of idea as evidence of evolution, but the truth is, what's been discovered is that the bacteria already have the ability to produce this citrate utilization. The gene is simply turned off. A mutation, a change, not necessarily a random one, but an inbuilt change based on the coding of the information in the bacteria.
Neff, I gotta
turns
say,
on a gene.
you're going all over the place.
Excuse me.
You've been going for a hot minute.
Excuse me.
Okay, so they're after all that rambling of bullshit, they're kind of asking him to sort of let somebody else talk. And now this is the culmination of what God told Nephilim Free. Pay very close attention. Very close attention.
Turns on the gene. I just want to say one thing.
No.
I'll never again debate.
God told me to make this video about 2 o'clock this afternoon. God told me he wanted me to do what I'm doing. I have a job for you, and it is to share this truth in the world. I want you to use YouTube to do it. I want you to make videos and explain to people that evolution is a lie, that I created it all, that the word science supports my... The Earth split open at the mid-Atlantic ridges, which run around the Earth like the seam of a baseball, and the great pressure of the crust of the Earth, 6 miles of it, on this water caused the water to eject from the Earth at supersonic speed. Much of this water escaped the escape velocity of the Earth and headed toward the Moon, where the Moon's gravity accelerated it, and the Moon was pelted by water frozen from the frozen water, which came from inside the Earth at the beginning of the Noachian flood.
Okay, so that's Nephilim Free in the beginning of that clip just a few days ago, I guess, where he gets he pretty much gets ignored by the younger people who know better, right? He started out by saying that God sent him to make YouTube videos, and now I have a YouTube video from Nephilim Free that we can react to. Oh, by the way, the room is open. It's right over there. There's the room. Okay, so it's open. You don't have to come in now. Maybe we'll, if you want to join in the reaction, I guess. But let's get it going so that we don't waste any time, because we don't have any time to waste, do we? Okay, so hold on a sec. Let me get running. All right, so this one's called "Why Evolution is Philosophy but Not Science." This is a some kind of a hangout or whatever he had.
That's the modern synthesis, right? No, I didn't say natural selection.
That's not what I wanted to play. Let me fix it. That's what I want to play.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In this video, in this live stream, I'm going to provide some reasons that we can know that evolution is not science, but it's instead philosophy. And the proponents of evolution theory actually admit this in the things that they say about evolution and the philosophies that they have produced about evolution. I'm going to explain to you 2 of those philosophies. The philosophy of punctuated equilibrium and the philosophy of directed natural selection. I'll be back in just a minute. Hope you're having a great day.
Oh, we're glad we have Nephilim Free to explain all this stuff to us. So let's see. He's going to be back in a minute. Oh, come on. Get back in. So what I'll do is I'll just through that speed it up a little bit, speed it up a lot. I'll speed it up so that, oh, he's talking. Hang on, guys. We don't want to miss a moment of this prophetic nonsense, do we?
What I mean by directed natural selection signs to their time change, which is came up.
Okay, here we go.
So in the 1960s, Niles Eldredge came up with the idea of punctuated equilibrium to explain the absence of transitional forms in the fossil record. The absence of clear transitional forms in the fossil record. If Darwinian evolution were true, that is gradual change, which is the logical form of evolution had evolution been true, then organisms would change incrementally slowly over time to accommodate to to possess new structural designs to their body plans, which would account for the variety of anatomical features and the tremendous number of creatures that exist and have existed on the earth. And Stephen Jay Gould very quickly jumped upon this idea and published in the science journals with Niles Eldredge about the idea of punctuated equilibrium. It was harshly received by the scientific community when it first came out because it seemed to contradict logic. The opposition came from many scientists who put forth the idea that a more rational explanation for evolution would be directed natural selection. Now, what they mean by directed natural selection is directed by the environment. Say, for example, let's say, for example, that, it's obvious that the Earth's environments are constantly in flux. They're changing. And so areas that are heavily forested are becoming deforested, and tundra might be encroaching, and the forest shrinking, let's say, on one side, and the tundra growing on the other as the trees depart from that area.
So listen, for all of you watching, I assume you're taking copious notes because there will be a test afterwards to make sure you understood the material that Nephilim Free is imparting to you and to me. If there's anything that makes sense to you at all, anything that makes sense out of all this gobbledygook that we're going to hear, I'd like you to make a note of it and bring it up into and put it in the chat or something. But anything that makes sense, put in the chat. If it doesn't make sense, then it's just regular Nephilim Free.
Yeah. So the idea is this. What they were trying to explain is what is called stasis of the fossil record. That is, the creatures appear in the fossil record and then they leave the fossil record essentially unchanged by any significant way. Certainly not in an anatomical way. They may have morphological change, but morphological change can't be extrapolated to anatomical change. More on that later.
Sounds very much like he's reading a script that he didn't write.
So they're trying to explain the stasis or non-change of creatures in the fossil record. So the opposition to punctuated equilibrium, that camp said, no, what's much more logical is directed natural selection. And directed natural selection claims that creatures, as environments change, such as a forest is retreating and being replaced by tundra, for example, or open land, then as the organisms continue to to grow and have.
You have a very shitty argument going there, dude. You're spluttering and you're stumbling. You don't know what you're talking about, Nephilim Free.
Produce new generations, They moved with the changing environment, so they continued to live in the forest, move with the forest as it moved. So they remained in an environment in which they were.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Moved with the forest as the forest moved. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know where Nephilim Free has been living, but I have never seen a forest move. I've never seen a population of people move with the forest. If you have, let me know, okay? But you have to have seen it, a moving forest, according to Nephilim Free.
Well suited for survival. So
what was that?
Oh, that was the opposition to punctuated equilibrium that it met when Niles Eldredge and Stephen Jay Gould, who is to date, the world's most famous paleontologist, Oxford University paleontologist, and who's heavily revered by evolutionist scientists, even though he had made clear admissions that the fossils simply don't show clear evidence of evolutionary transition.
Some guy made a statement that fossils don't show shit. That's what Nephilim Free just said.
So the opposition to this was directed natural selection. That natural selection directs evolution by the stasis. It explains the stasis in the fossil record. Because
is he going to explain what stasis is?
Because if organisms remained in environments which they were well suited for, they didn't experience the structural design change. So the proponents of directed natural...
Does Nephilim Free know that if there is bone that hasn't been ruined or cracked or broken, it's intact, if there's intact bone, fossilized bone, that they can actually go into that bone and find microorganisms in that bone because they haven't been destroyed by the elements, because they've been protected by the undestroyed bone. That's how they do archaeology these days, or paleontology, and all kinds of ontologies and ologies these days. They have got it. I want to tell you that I've been listening to this podcast for the last couple of months called The Prehistory Guys. I recommend it. If you're into podcasts, The Prehistory Guys. What are their names? Michael Bott and Rupert Soskin. Let's carry on. Let's carry on. Nephilim Free, continue your bullshitting. All right. Verbal spewing about to commence now.
Natural selection didn't really have a great explanation for why the stasis, why evolution is not, transitional forms are not clearly seen in the fossil record. But they argued against the punctuated equilibrists about the stasis, about the reason for stasis in the fossil record. And they argued that directed natural selection was true, that organisms seem to remain in...
I got a question, Neff. I've got a question. Directed natural selection. What is that? Could you please expound a little bit on what directed natural selection is? Because that's not a term that I understand, nor have I ever heard it other than from you. So directed natural selection, I think we're looking for an explanation for this at some point.
The environment in which they were well suited. As the environments of the earth changed, they moved with that changing environment. And so they remained essentially looking the same. They never directly were able to provide an account for why the organisms would transition from one to another. They were only arguing for why creatures seem to be the same. Why they didn't seem, the fossil record doesn't seem to show clear evidence of evolutionary transition. This was their philosophical idea about the past. The punctuated equilibrianists, which the most prominent ones, of course, were um, Niles Eldredge and Stephen Jay Gould, argued for the opposite. Stephen Stanley and others argued that directed natural selection was true. And so both camps.
What
Hey,
the
Doki, good
fuck
to see you.
is directed natural selection? He said it again. Directed natural selection, but what the hell is it?
So both camps are trying to.
I submit to you that there's no such thing. At least not freely. Suppose you can direct natural selection in the lab, but I still don't understand how you can direct natural. No, I don't get it. Help me.
Explain the stasis in the fossil record. That is, the organisms appear in the fossil record, and then they leave the fossil record essentially unchanged in any significant way. And this is a conundrum for evolution theory. So these are two philosophies about why organisms universally seem to appear to remain the same without transitional forms in the fossil record. Hello, Brandon. How are you? And these are two philosophies. Now, they're not science because they're not demonstrable. You can't test for them. You see? It's philosophy. Philosophical ideas about what may have taken place in the past to explain the non change of living things in the fossil record, as it's called.
Gobbledygook.
They're philosophies. They're not science. Science is based on what's observable, testable, and repeatable. But these philosophies are extrapolations of what may or could have happened in the past to explain a phenomenon, which seems to be inexplicable according to evolution theory, which is stasis. Why organisms appear in the fossil record and then disappear in the fossil record, and the first to the last seems to be unchanged in any significant way. Certainly not in any way that one can point to and say, this is obvious, clear, visual evidence of transition, because even both camps have admitted evermore, including Stephen Stanley, who was a proponent of directed natural selection in the 60s and 70s.
Okay, so what the fuck is directed natural selection? Please, Nephilim Free, could you tell us? Because up to now you're just bounce. It's like you're circling a black hole. You're waiting to be sucked in, but until you get sucked in, you're gonna babble nonsense. And right now, my friend, you're babbling nonsense. But we're listening. We're listening for something that is true.
In the 1970s, rather. And Stephen Jay Gould, Niles Eldredge, and their camp, who were punctuated equilibrianists, including Gaylord.
Punctuated equilibrianists. Punctuated equilibrium. What does punctuated equilibrium really mean? All these terms that he's throwing at us that have no meaning. Stasis in the fossil record. Like, what the fuck's he talking about? He's just making assertions and claims, and every single one of them is specious.
Simpson, who was once the president of the American Academy of Sciences, he was a paleontologist also. He was a punctuated equilibrianist. And so the explanation from the punctuated equilibrianist is that because evolution occurs in bursts, a creature will adapt to change in the environment in a dramatic way by what's called something that's truly ridiculous, called the hopeful monster hypothesis. Doesn't qualify as a theory, it's a hypothesis only. And the hopeful monster hypothesis is this. Evolutionists call it the hopeful monster theory when they actually talk about it. They don't like talking about it because it's ridiculous. But when they do,
I like the way he talks about evolutionists. Evolutionists. Oh, and the emphasis is on evil. Pretty funny.
They call it the hopeful monster theory. It's not a theory. It doesn't qualify as a theory. It's a concept only, so it's nothing more than a hypothesis. And it really shouldn't be put forth as that, but nonetheless. So the hopeful monster hypothesis is that creatures are born with dramatic differences. It's not tiny increments, it's large increments from one generation to another, so that evolution occurs in bursts. Creatures transition from one type of creature, such as fish, evolving into land-dwelling amphibian tetrapods. Not over countless minuscule successional changes,
Oh,
but
really?
a relatively small number of large changes, which is of course preposterous.
All right, where is the data?
Because the number of changes necessary for that to occur to the various biological systems of a fish are innumerable.
Give us some data.
There would be millions.
Ooh, that's
Millions.
a problem. What's the problem with that?
To change the anatomy. So, but they nonetheless put forth this absurd idea called the hopeful monster hypothesis. This was the punctuated equilibriumist's idea. And
he's like giving
Stephen
us some
Stanley
kind of
and other
a
evolutionists
pseudo-history
who
lesson.
argued against them said, no, directed natural selection is far more likely. And you just have to get on board with the fact that if evolutionary transition occurred, they believe it did, it would have had to have taken place in countless numbers of very small increments.
Over time,
Stephen
yes.
Jay Gould and Niles Eldredge in their camp put forth this idea of the hopeful monster and punctuated equilibrium. That punctuated equilibrium produced hopeful monsters. That is, that a creature was born with a considerably noticeable difference between its offspring and the parent. And that considerably noticeable difference was then preserved, and then relatively few generations later, another hopeful monster.
Well, what is the data that you're relying this on this for? Because I want to see an offspring demonstrably totally different to its mother. Like, I'm not sure what kind of a difference you're referring to, but I'm pretty sure it's massive. It's almost like you won't recognize the mother from the offspring. Well, in a failed when genetics fails and mutations emerge that are not successful, that can happen. But what I think that's the only thing I can think of. I have no idea what you're talking about, Nephilim.
Was born with another small leap in structural design change. And this happens in a very relatively brief period of geologic time, according to the evolutionists, vast amounts of imaginary time, to produce in what is considered to be a very brief period of unimaginably vast time, according to them.
So punctuated equilibrium was a short period of time during much higher oxygenated Earth. Well, he still doesn't provide a time frame for this. Like when? How far back is he talking about?
A creature which is structurally extremely different and of a fundamentally different type of organism. But if he, so that's a philosophy. You see, it's not science because it can't be observed, demonstrated, or repeated. So punctuated equilibrium is a philosophy and not science. Directed natural selection is.
How can it be a philosophy and not science if you have data? You just said there was data to prove the. Or did I misunderstand his gobbledygook? Either way, it's still gobbledygook.
also a philosophy. It's not science because it's not observable, repeatable, or demonstrable either. See,
So hold on a second. If science is not observable, repeatable, and demonstrable, what is the difference between repeatable and demonstrable in the first place? Observable, okay. Repeatable, yes. Demonstrable, Nephilim. What the fuck does that mean? Why should you have? Why should you have Why should you have two words that mean the same thing in your definition of science? Maybe Nephilim. Maybe you should have said something like predictable, observable. What was the second one? Testable, predictable. What do you think about that, Nephilim? Are you gonna change your spiel? I mean, you've been at it for a long time and you have failed miserably, Nephilim Free. You have failed miserably in your God sent me to debunk evolution shtick. Come on. Come on.
so these are philosophies, and evolutionists put forth and have put forth numerous philosophies about evolution theory over the years. There are many. Evolution theory is rife with philosophy. Rife with philosophy.
Rife.
But it is not science.
No, not
It
science.
is not what is observable, demonstrable, or repeatable. It is ideas, philosophical
Again, he said
construct.
it again. Observable, demonstrable, and repeatable. What happened to predictable? To predict the whole thing is to be able to predict what's through science, to be able to predict, and that works a treat, don't you think? We can predict based on past data with scientific formulas and testable and those scientific formulas being tested beyond doubt. We can predict. That's how the space program works. All on predictability. They send a spacecraft to a certain place. They don't just say, off you go, and we'll see if we can guide you by Google. No, they predict every step of the way. Because science, because physics is unchangeable. Or should I say it's unchanging. You can rely on physics, you can rely on it. Get your spacecraft to. If it didn't have physics, you wouldn't be able to get Voyager 2 and Voyager 1 outside of the solar system. You wouldn't be able to even send up a Dragon from SpaceX to dock with the International Space Station if you didn't have physics. So Nephilim Free, so far, I'm giving you a F for fail. But carry on burying yourself, my friend. Carry on burying yourself.
To explain what exists today and how it came to be that way. But since they can't show how it came to be that way because the science doesn't show it, the fossils of the earth do not show clear evidence of evolutionary transition, and virtually every prominent evolutionist scientist in the world has written a book on the matter of the fossil record, has acknowledged in their own books that the fossil record does not show clear evidence of transition, that organisms literally burst onto the scene, very different from any other antecedent, and that's the way they exit the fossil record as well. They've admitted it.
Okay. I don't know, man. This guy is running off at the mouth. What I'd prefer to do is go here, where normal people can join in and have a conversation between themselves and me. So I'm going to keep this this room is open. Oh shit, I better put the join information, okay? But this the chat room is open, all right? Carry on, F.
The overwhelming majority of evolutionist scientists have admitted this in their own writings, intended to be read by their own camp, by their peers. So, you see, evolution theory is rife with philosophy, but it's absent of science. They use science in an attempt to transform their philosophy into science. And so there are all kinds of philosophical ramblings in evolutionary quote-unquote science. Synergetic epistasis, and the list of ideas to try to explain away the absence of evidence of evolution or a mechanism for it is what evolutionists produce endlessly. Philosophies, but not science.
You're listening to this, an absence of evidence. Oh, God.
So maybe now you know a little bit more about the difference between the contention over the absence of clear transitional forms in the fossil record and why it's philosophy. It boils down to punctuated equilibrium versus gradual change, which was put forth by an opposing camp, which was called directed natural selection is the title they gave it. And this is history. This is 1970s. This was a controversy.
There you go. He says it again. Directed natural selection. That's the title it gave, but he doesn't have a clue what it is because he won't say what it is. Nephilim free. I think you're an idiot. I really do.
Brewing and steeping in the scientific community about evolution in the 1970s. So now I'm going to share the link to join. Anybody who wants to join the room and have a discussion,
this could be fun.
Discuss this matter
could be
or
fun.
any other matter relating to evolution and science and creation, you're welcome to. Let me post the link. Yeah, I hear you, D'Angelo.
D'Angelo! Hey, D'Angelo! He's recognizing you. I hear you, D'Angelo. Hey, listen, the link that you see on the screen is the link to join by phone. The link to join the Google Meet is in the description. And it's in the, I'm pretty sure I put it in the, yes, and I put it in the chat. So there you go. So let's see, can you guys beat Nephilim Free? My guest, I'm inviting my guests, and Nephilim Free is inviting his guests. Let's see who's braver.
D'Angelo posts in jest. Evolution is a fact. Get over it. Isn't that what we hear from the evolutionists all the time?
D'Angelo, did you say evolution is a fact? Get over it? How is that in jest? I don't think so. He just said it. D'Angelo said, evolution is a fact. Get over it. Okay. D'Angelo is now pro-science. Okay? You heard it here first.
Evolution is a fact, man. Just get over it. Yeah.
Even Nephilim Free said it. Evolution is a fact, man. Just get over it. So take a so Christians, take heed of what D'Angelo said, and take heed of what Nephilim Free has just said. Evolution is a fact, man. Just get over it. You can make a bumper sticker out of that, T-shirt out of that.
How many times have we heard that? Yeah, it's quite. We hear that a lot, don't we? Hear it all the time.
See, all they're doing is jabber, 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 jabber. There's no reason, there's no logic, there's no critical thinking, there's nothing behind his words, nothing other than the sound of his voice. Where are they?
Evolutionists love to repeat that. Because, you know, instead of an explanation, right, Otangelo? Instead of science, they just throw that out. Oh, this proves my point. Evolution is a fact. Get over it. That's what's truth, man. Then you ask them, well, what's the proof of evolution? What do? Evolution is a fact, man. Get over it. Repeat the same jargon.
He's so dishonest.
Instead of the scientific verification of evolution, which they can't provide.
So dishonest.
So.
Unfucking
Yeah, Alien Robot Ghost says, abiogenesis is easy, man. Yeah, right. Right, Tangelo. See, Darwin's finches, man. They're still pushing that, aren't they?
Okay, listen.
Look, the beaks of these finches
okay, all right,
change.
There's just so much I can take of this, honestly. So I'm going to switch this whole focus away from Nephilim free shit and into this chat room, this voice chat room. It's open. It's open. Come on in. If you don't come on in, I'm just going to shut it down. Come back later. But actually, you know what I could do? I could shut it down and come back later, and we can carry on with this Nephilim free, because I just can't take it anymore. It's just so much bull. Although I am willing to make a part 2 out of it and continue. What do you think? You think it's a crappy idea? Well, at the very, very least, we've proved our point. We know, well, a number of points. Firstly, Nephilim free is nuts. He's crazy. He's out of it. I don't think he's quite as mentally aware as he never was before. And it's a shame. It's pretty sad and pitiful to see. What's even more shameful to see is that people like Otangelo, Rebuke and Reprove, and all these nutty Christians actually go and support the mental illness that Nephilim free has. Perhaps they all have the same mental illness and they all don't recognize it in each other. That's possible. But that's it for now. I don't think I could squeeze more than... I didn't think I could squeeze more than 45 minutes out of this... out of Nephilim free. But you can only get so much juice out of a lemon. And as such, I'm going to bid you adieu. Thank you for watching. You're welcome to join the room anytime. I think I'm going to contemplate coming back later with another with a continuation of this, but I'll rely on your comments in order to make that decision. All right. So Nephilim free and everybody, thank you very much. I'm out of here for now.